Okay, hey everyone, CVH here with more IDC31 tournament commentary and analysis of our top 8 games. We're still in the group stage, and I have the second top 8 group stage match against Nasuss, who I know from him being Carl's opponent earlier in the tournament that he is playing Water Dark, Fire Nature, Turbo Burn. We're jumping right into it because I started recording after Nasuss already played Mana, and my suspicions are confirmed when Essence Self comes out. So to recap, we went 6-0 in Swiss, but we lost our first top 8 group stage match against Dark Signer. So at this point, I know that I have to win against Nasuss and Claude Alpha to make top 4 for that extra IDC point. So yeah, Essence Self comes down, and this is a little bit unfortunate because not only did I lose the die roll, but I also don't have a proactive turn 2 play. I wind up playing Spiral Gate just because I know that Nasuss's deck, I know this from Carl, I don't actually know the list, but I know the list is full of mana burn, like Mana Crisis and Crisis Boulder in multiples each, plus the Reap and Sow. So if I let Essence Self stick, I mean, it's one thing if I have a Ganta that's like bashing face, but if I don't, and I let the Essence Self stick, I could get in a situation where I basically just never really get to 3 or 4 mana the entire game, which sounds ridiculous, but in our testing with a similar deck for Carl's bracket tournament is a thing that can actually happen. Yeah, it looks like, I don't know if he had fire mana, but he did have the Crisis Boulder, and he does just replay the Essence Self, which I kind of sort of have an answer to in Stained Glass. The card was meant to mostly tech for aggressive and mid-range decks, but being able to bounce Essence Self over and over and prevent that mana benefit is also pretty appealing, honestly. I don't remember what Nasuss's play here was, but I know that since he is a Turbo Burn deck, this would be a prime turn for Reap and Sow. It's only Mana Crisis. Mana Crisis, which only actually cost 3 there. I think there was a mouse slip to tap all 4. I'm pretty sure he knows his deck and Essence Self well enough to know that if he had Reap and Sow, it would have been significantly better in every way, because it also ramps him. I draw Earth Stomp Giant, which is... It's already looking like we're miles away from 5 mana. So I just stay with Mono Water for now. Don't want to put 1 nature mana down there just to get sniped. Bounce the Essence Self and start attacking with Stained Glass, which seems pretty strong to me, honestly. Of course, there are answers to this board. It's not a very strong board power-wise, but right now we still have Initiative. I have Unicorn Fish for anything that Stained Glass can't deal with. Earth Stomp coming down in 2 turns is looking pretty solid still. Yeah, Ness is on the turbo part of the Turbo Burn. Gonna Fairy Life into Essence Self. I guess he didn't have a follow-up, right? That's kind of a read there. He could have Essence Selfed into 1 mana Fairy Life, but I guess it wasn't required for anything. So yeah, I'm gonna put the swap down and play the larger thing in my hand, which is now the Copper Locust, because Stained Glass is already dealing with the Essence Self perfectly well. Yeah, we're just not letting Essence Self stick. Love to see that. And Hulkus goes in, breaks another shield. We're dodging shield triggers, which is great. And yeah, we're already representing lethal. At this point, I am mostly concerned about Apocalypse Vice. I'm not sure if it's in Nasuss's deck. I have to imagine it is, because it's a great card if he's only going to play 1 piece of removal. With all that ramp, I imagine Apocalypse Vice is high on the list of cards you would want to play. And our board fits into that perfect 8,000 power mark right now, which would be really, really bad for me. If I lost my whole board now, I'd just follow up with Earth Stomp Giant, and it's probably much easier for my opponent to deal with just 1 large creature than a bunch of them. Cards like Soul Swap and Terror Pit do exist, as do Miraculous Plagues, which would also not be a great card to see come down here. Lost Soul down, Essence Self is replayed yet again, and yeah, Volcano Charger deals with the Hulkus here, which I thought was a little strange. I felt like maybe, I mean, I know there's a second Essence Self on board now, but like I'm going to attack regardless, and I'm going to be able to bounce 1 Essence Self. It really does depend. I guess the thing that he's thinking is we can always trade with Stained Glass with the Essence Self that isn't bounced. Looking at my hand, I just have Unicorn Fish for the full clear, so I can't actually go for lethal here with Hypersprint Warrior with no fire mana. But I can just play a large Earth Stomp Giant, or I can just go for the full clear. There's pros and cons to each. If I think that my opponent is playing Apocalypse Vice, Earth Stomp Giant hedges against that. If I think my opponent is not, and or is more likely to just have Miraculous Plague, well then that's going to be good against me either way. but playing Unicorn Fish is probably just slightly better because it removes my opponent's entire board and prevents the trade. And yeah, actually that is hedging against lethal prevention with the Miraculous Plague there, because now I still have 3 creatures on board if I don't hit a shield trigger, and Miraculous Plague would only be able to deal with 2. Of course, I immediately hit a shield trigger, so I take back everything I just said, and now Aqua Surfer unfortunately has a favorable against Stained Glass. So it looks like Essence Elf might finally stick to the board, if that is indeed the play for the 4th time. Nasuss took a bit of time on this turn, and rightfully so. I think his back was really up against the wall here. Goes for Aqua Deformer, which is a neat card. I should be hovering over it in case you all don't know what it does, but yeah. He gets to pick 2 mana, add them to his hand, and then I do the same. So hooray, I get to choose, but on the downside, I'm going up to 3 mana next turn. So yeah, not able to play my Hyper Sprint Warrior. Not that I had fire mana for it anyway. We're stuck on replaying Copper Locust. Nasuss returned Soul Swap and lost Soul. I'm returning Lucky Ball and Swap, losing my Stained Glass to the Surfer, drawing Spiral Gate, and yeah, the play is just gonna be Copper Locust. I keep Soul Swap in my hand, I think, this turn. I don't really know if that actually really matters. I guess there's a little decision here on whether or not I attack with this just to get that last shield out of there. I wind up going for it. I think that's right. If my opponent has Plague or just other mass removal here, I want my opponent on 0 shields, so the eventual Hyper Sprint Warrior is lethal, assuming I at some point see fire mana, which has got to happen eventually. Of course, Plague would be worst case scenario because it would put me on 1 mana, and I'd be multiple turns away from the fire mana, and that's multiple turns that Nasuss can just find more burn to keep me at that low mana, and to be honest, he has 6 cards in hand, so if I get put down to 1 or 2 mana this turn, it's probably just where I'm going to stay the rest of the game. The only thing standing in Nasuss's way of doing that is that he has to keep answering the threats that I keep putting on board, which is like a Copper Locust on turn 6 or 7 or whatever we're on here, but still, it's threatening enough to win the game, so that has to be the priority. Ah yes, the Bolzar Dragon. Surprised that's the first we've seen it. I don't know how many copies are in the deck. My guess is 2. He immediately changes his mind. Goes for Fairy Life down. Bolzar would be a fun card to bounce with Stained Glass, for sure. Play is Essence Elf into 2-cost Soul Swap, into replaying the Surfer, into a Reap and Sow. Nice, and then Deformer takes a trade, and then I just need to stick a mana this turn, and then either win with the Copper Locust or play the Hyper Sprint Warrior on the following turn. Would be nice to find fire mana for that. Quixotic goes down for the Locust. Again, that could have been probably swapped down just in case I don't draw fire mana, but I draw... Well, I wouldn't be able to play double 2 next turn anyway, actually, so it doesn't matter there. Because double Quixotic wouldn't even be... Or, I guess, okay, yeah, I could have played Quixotic Gate next turn. I don't know if that's ever better. Mana decision is a little bit questionable. Again, was playing this on not a lot of sleep. I think it was like maybe 6:45 or 7 a.m. by the time this match was going along. It's still the same day, by the way. I'm just a little bit more awake, and I'm on cup of coffee number 2 at this point. It's early afternoon, I think. Oh, it's 11:30. Oh my god. It's still so early for a Sunday. Yeah. The plague did in fact happen. I'm on 1 mana. Not ideal. And now it just looks like Nasuss is debating whether it's time to set up a 2-turn kill. He goes for it. Aqua Surfer is really my only out here. Spiral Gate delays things a little bit, potentially. But yeah, since I didn't hit an Aqua Surfer, I have no way to... I still don't have fire mana. Not that it really matters, but I mean, if I only have 2 mana, I feel like at least let me play all my civilizations at one point. But yeah, we're very far from the Hyper Sprint Warrior, unfortunately. All I can do is play mana. And yeah, at this point, the mistake last turn really does sort of make itself apparent. I should have gone for... if I could have played Quixotic, I would. I wind up not playing Spiral Gate here. I'm not entirely sure why so much. I mean, oh, I know why I didn't play Spiral Gate. I don't want to actually prevent lethal on board because I know Aqua Surfer from Shields is my only out since I can't even play my Speed Attacker next turn. So my only shot is Surfer. And if I Spiral Gate, my opponent will probably just play 2 creatures and make Surfer not an out for lethal. It won't even prevent lethal if my opponent waits an extra turn. So my hope was that I would not play Gate and my opponent would attempt lethal with just 1 extra creature. I would hit Surfer, which would simultaneously stop lethal and give me lethal. Which doesn't happen. Nasuss plays it safe, unfortunately, and just discards my 1,000,000 card hand. Reap and Sows probably plays another creature here. If he didn't go for it last turn, I don't think he would go for it this turn with just 1 extra creature because he knows Aqua Surfer would simultaneously just prevent him from killing me and also give me lethal. And now this turn, with 6 creatures on board, I would need 3 shield triggers, which is... I don't even think possible. I think there's been too many gates played at this point. Maybe he'll wait 1 more turn to make it literally impossible. He doesn't. Yeah, the Crisis Boulder was a weird play since Bolzard's already going to do that. I do hit Aqua Surfer. Oh, is that just lethal? No, it would have been, but yeah, there's like 6 creatures. Sorry, I'm on like 4 hours of sleep or something like that. So yeah, I do actually find the Surfer, which means if my opponent had gotten a little bit antsy and gone for lethal with only 1 extra creature, that would have been GG. But Nasuss played it safe. Besides the completely unnecessary Crisis Boulder at the end, I think he navigated the end of that game extremely well and didn't allow Aqua Surfer to ruin his dreams. Moving on to game 2. That was kind of a sad loss. I remember Carl telling me after losing to Nasuss 1-2 with a similar Water Fire Nature deck, the Nasuss Turbo Burn was quite annoying. We dodged the absurd early game by bouncing Essence Elf. But yeah, that burn really did come in clutch at the end, along with Lost Soul, to be honest. On the bright side, we were on the play game 2, and hand is looking pretty sweet. We got double Ganta, like seeing that a lot. I debate, I think, putting 1 down just to, like, sort of mana fix. Volcano Charger, I think in my head the Volcano Charger could actually be quite good in this matchup because Essence Elf is such a threat. And you know, could be like 2 into 3 into Volcano Charger into turn 5 Jigalzor. And if I do it like this, I might either put Volcano Charger or Jigalzor down turn 2 to play Ganta. But that's what I go for. I just think Ganta is that much better. And that's okay. That's really okay. I don't remember this turn whether I wind up putting Jigalzor or Volcano Charger down. I think Jigalzor down is probably fine. Because there's a swap in the deck somewhere, another Jigalzor, and we don't always need Jigalzor to win. It's also like, are we going to get the 6 mana against a burn deck? If we don't keep Volcano Charger for Essence Elf, it's less likely. But yeah, I could see either of these being reasonable, as long as I get the Ganta on board. Oh, I go for Essence Elf here, because okay, this kind of makes sense too, because I know my opponent's only turn to play is either Fairy Life or Essence Elf of his own. So I do this, and I'm thinking to myself, if I draw anything that goes in untapped next turn, I can just turn 3 Volcano Charger, and that would be incredible. And if I wind up having to do it like this and just play Ganta this turn, the Essence Elf swinging at a shield against a clear uncontested board is about the same as Ganta would have been. So I'm not really missing the Ganta on board at this time. This turn, since Essence Elf was missed on my opponent's side, I do put the Charger down, and that's largely just because I drew another 2-drop, so my logic is that I can just double 2 next turn. My opponent's probably not going to play Essence Elf on 3, and if he does, the double 2 will outpace him. But I do immediately hit a shield 1 Aqua Surfer, which sets me back an awful lot. And now looking at the hand, I can't play Quixotic. So yeah, I just go for... Or I can't play the double Ganta without Quixotic going into mana, so that's what I do. Holding on to Aqua Surfer, which isn't the best thing to have as my last card if I need more gas. Crisis Boulder comes down, and I'm just going to get rid of a mana here. Getting rid of Ganta is obviously too much tempo lost. Choose a nature mana. Looking back into last game, fire mana was at a premium. So if I need to rely on a speed attacker at the end of this game, I feel like I'm going to want to have at least 1 fire mana for that. Break another shield, it's a Fairy Life. Break a 3rd shield, it's nothing. Yeah, first 2 shields being triggers, that's kind of rough. Aqua Surfer shield 1 is like worst case scenario. Fairy Life at least helps my opponent ramp. Doesn't look like Nasuss has much to do other than just a little bit more burn, so I guess that's good. And yeah, Gantas are kind of just doing their thing here. Regardless of having almost no mana, I can just sort of chill, play my small creatures, and just keep busting those shields wide open with Gantas. Hit another Fairy Life, break the 5th shield, hit another Fairy Life. So I broke Surfer, Fairy Life, blank, Fairy Life, Fairy Life. And yeah, I type in like ha 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 in the chat down there. Like, oh my goodness, that's a lot of Fairy Lives. Oh yeah, Nasuss responded, so that's where all the Fairy Lives went. Yeah, this game Nasuss missed turn 2 entirely. I thought it was going to be the Essence Elf, so I kept the Volcano Charger, but Fairy Life is obviously also good on turn 2. And all Nasuss can do is Plague for 2, and since Surfer is not big enough to trade, we tie things up 1-1 pretty quickly and move on to game 3, where my hand is already looking significantly worse, and I'm going to be on the draw. Yeah, this is pretty rough. I immediately put the Rebirth down, and just have to hope that I draw one of my 2s. There are 9 in the deck, and I think I get there. Yeah, I draw the Ganta off the top right in the nick of time, which is, I think, pretty required. I can't just not pressure my Turbo Burn opponent. Earth Stomp goes down. My logic there is that it's a little expensive. I need to put either Earth Stomp or Pyro Fighter down. There's only 1 Pyro in the deck, so having those speed attackers to rely on is quite good against the deck with no shield regeneration. If I can get my opponent down to 1 or 0 shields, Pyro Fighter could very easily close the game for me. Ganta breaks, hit a first shield trigger again, but fortunately this one is not an Aqua Surfer. Crisis Boulder causing me to lose a mana is much less detrimental to my plan. I would have liked to play a stickier creature next turn, like Kirill, even if it was just for the body, but I'm happy with where things are generally. And I top deck Stained Glass, which is kind of great here, just because it gives me something to do that's not Pyro Fighter. I'd rather wait for Pyro Fighter until I need to play it, and I can actually start closing the game. Do I hit a second shield trigger too? Oh my goodness. Crisis Boulder and Mana Crisis. So at this point, I'm thinking to myself that I guess I just never get to play Kirill. But to be fair, it wouldn't be that amazing in this matchup anyway. Reap and Sow, putting me at 2 mana. It's okay. It's okay. Fairy Life, putting my opponent to 8. Yeah, we're definitely losing the mana race. But we are winning the actual race. And that's what matters. So, yep, I just revert back to a mono water deck and continue the breaking. And I don't remember this. That must have been too early in the morning for me to register what was happening. But I broke Mana Crisis. No, I broke Crisis Boulder, Mana Crisis, Crisis Boulder. And finally, Shield 4 isn't a trigger. And at this point, I'm feeling pretty good. The only thing is that Plague would put me at 0 mana, as would Aqua Deformer, as would Fortress Shell if it's even in the deck. I don't know if it is, though. I don't think so. It's going to be Essence Elf into... Plague would be really bad here. It's just a Surfer, which is great to see because it means I still have Lethal on board and don't even need to try to top deck Fire Mana. Ganta goes back to my hand. It can be Fire Mana for next turn, but I just don't have a play this turn, sadly. So I think I put it down. And if I hit a shield trigger this turn, at least I have Pyro Fighter. So even if this is a trigger, as long as my opponent doesn't burn, like, well, my opponent's gonna burn. So I guess Pyro Fighter is not really a reliable way to win the game. And I do hit a 4th shield trigger out of 5, and this one actually saves my opponent. Very sad, but at least Stained Glass gets to bounce Essence Elf another time. And then, yeah, Soul Swap is just going to replay Aqua Surfer, bouncing my other Stained Glass. And, yeah, this is a little scary. Now it's starting to actually get scary because I only have the 1 Fire Mana. Plague would put me down to 1 mana. It's double Essence Elf and an attack. Nasuss actually doesn't have any other cards in hand and doesn't have a way to burn me, so all I have to do is drop the Pyro Fighter. And I accidentally target Aqua Surfer there, but I think we all know that that was going face. So it takes a very clutch, close game 3. And that's it. Hopefully you all enjoyed. That was a tricky match to navigate. It never feels good to have to play a match on so little mana, so many turns in a row. Really glad we got there, though, after losing game 1. And yeah, 1-1 in the group stage. So one more match to go. That'll be against Claude Alpha, who we played earlier in the tournament, who's looking for revenge. He's playing Water Dark aggro. So stay tuned. That match will probably be going up tomorrow. If the cadence I'm posting these on Carl's channel is a day apart, then yeah, that'll come up tomorrow. Hopefully you all enjoyed, and thanks for watching.